The GSR II is a very welcome update to the ZOWIE GSR, which is a legendary mousepad, especially among Jack FPS players. Some improvements on the GSR II should make it a much better mousepad than its predecessor, but there are also many things that are familiar from the original GSR, like for example ZOWIE did decide to keep the rubber base, which sticks to my desk just fine. The stitching is also the same as previously and not quite as low profile as on many modern mousepads. And the surface should also perform pretty much the same as the OG GSR, so let's go check it out. So here we have the new GSR II, and this is the old GSR, and I will mention that the glide is extremely similar in these two pads. Basically my old GSR has been in use for about 3 weeks and the new one for about a week, so the new one feels a little bit faster, but that may be due to this one being a little bit worn out. A quick update after using the GSR II for about 4 weeks. It still might be a little bit faster and there is no sign of it wearing out. ZOWIE mentioned that they have fixed the X and Y difference on the GSR II, and I can say that I don't at least feel any difference on the X and Y axis on the new GSR. There is an ever so slight difference on the old one, but this is not something that would ruin my gameplay experience at all. So yes, the one thing that I was hoping for is that the new GSR II is not going to be faster and is still going to be just as controlled or nearly as controlled as the old GSR, and that very much seems to be the case. Let's talk a little bit about the overall glide of the GSR II, and here I'm testing the mousepad with the LethalGamingGear OP1WE, and the glide is still very controlled even though these feet are very good and quite fast. The feeling is much slower with the GSR II and good and fast mouse feet than the experience is with, for example, Saturn Pro and bad mouse feet. Then again, with the G Pro X Superlight, the mousepad feels a little bit faster than it does with the OP1WE. Still very controlled and very nice for especially those Jack FPS games. With the Razer Viper Mini Signature Edition, the mousepad feels pretty much the same as it does with the Superlight, so a little bit faster than with the OP1WE. With the ZOWIE EC3C wireless, the mousepad feels a little bit slower than it does with the Superlight. It's pretty much the same as actually it does feel with the OP1WE. Maybe a little bit scratchier, maybe a little bit less smooth, because the ZOWIE feet are not quite as high quality as some of those better feet are. And the NP01S wireless from VAXI feels pretty much the same as the Superlight and the Razer Viper Mini Signature Edition. Just comparing mousepads against each other, basically all the new modern control pads are faster than the GSR II, and so is for example the SteelSeries QCK. You can just feel more friction when you are moving the mouse across the surface. There is also slightly more pull when you're changing directions, more friction for those micro adjustments, and also more static friction when you're starting to move your mouse. And now we are going to run a very scientific test for humidity, so I'm dropping some water on both of these pads and see how they behave. This is the new GSR, this is the old one. I had to speed this up because it took way too long, but you can see that the GSR II sucks into moisture, or whatever is the right term. And with this there is clearly a major difference to the old GSR, as I need to wipe it down to make it dry. And testing the glide, I don't feel any difference in the area that has the water in with the GSR II. But I don't really even feel that much difference with the old GSR. So yeah, this is not a very scientific test, but at least you can see that these surfaces do behave differently when it comes down to humidity. Let's talk a little bit about how this mousepad performs in-game. And for anybody that knows the ZOWIE GSR, they know that this is a very prevalent mousepad in Jack FPS. And for good reason, because the glide is very optimal for precision and flick shots. But what may be a little bit surprising for some is that it's not at all bad for tracking as well. I've been running these Kovac scenarios for benchmarking, and my tracking scores with the GSR II are the same as they used to be with any mousepad, or I've even made records with the GSR II. The main issue for me with some mousepad and tracking based games is when it gets too hard to switch directions. So there is either too much friction or the mousepad is too rough and the roughness can be felt through mouse feet, making it feel sort of uncomfortable and unresponsive when you try to switch directions quickly when your target is moving. No such issues with the GSR II, and also a major positive factor is that micro adjustments are easy to make. For example, when over or under flicking with a deagle, I had no trouble readjusting. And I am usually quite bad with the deagle, but because of the increase in control that the GSR II provides, I think it gave me more confidence. But what do I actually overall think about the ZOWIE GSR II? Is it still a good mousepad in 2023? So two things. One is that it is disappointing that the quality hasn't improved, so we still have the same stitching, the same base. It still comes very much rolled up in a box and will not stay flat right away. And these things should be visible in the pricing as well. I've got no clue what the final pricing will be, but I would say that around 40 euros is a little bit too much for this mousepad. I think that something like 30 euros would be fair. Then the second thing is that I'm extremely happy that they changed nothing about the surface, so it's still very controlled as it used to be, and quite slow with a lot of static and kinetic friction, which is not very trendy with the enthusiast space. But then again, a mousepad like this will for sure have its marketplace, especially with attack FPS players. All in all, I'm still very happy with what they did with the mousepad. Durability was the main issue with the GSR, and hopefully now it's fixed. Of course, I can't confirm it, having only used the pad for about 4 weeks. And that's it for now. Thank you guys so much for watching, and see you in the next one.